Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start today's video with a story that hits close to home for anyone who's ever trusted the wrong boss. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. I spent a weekend reading HOA bylaws. It got 2 corrupt board members removed. I'll be honest, I'd never cared much about our HOA. We moved into a brand new subdivision, barely 2 years old, and as long as my grass was cut and no one was putting pink flamingos on my lawn, I figured I didn't need to bother with meetings. That changed when my neighbor Tom, the kind of guy who reads every document before signing, knocked on my door one evening looking annoyed. "Dude, you need to come to this HOA meeting tomorrow," he said. "They're pulling some shady crap and no one's doing anything about it." I shrugged. "What kind of shady crap?" He grinned grimly. "Come see for yourself." Well, my undergrad degree is in political science, and I've always had a weird fascination with rules, procedures, and governance. So fine, I went. The meeting started calm enough. The HOA board sat up front, 5 people total, trying to look professional in folding chairs. Then one resident stood up and asked why money from the community landscaping budget had been spent on new fencing behind one board member's house. That's when things went nuclear. The board member in question, let's call him Todd, jumped up like someone had hit a nerve. "You don't know what the hell you're talking about," he yelled. "I don't answer to you." That immediately got my attention. Another board member, Linda, nodded vigorously beside him. "Yeah, you people have no authority over us," she added. "We're the board. We make the decisions." Red flag. Massive red flag. The room erupted in murmurs. I raised my hand, and the HOA president, Mark, who looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair, gave me the floor. "Actually," I said calmly, "that's not how it works. You two do answer to the homeowners. That's literally what an HOA board is. Representatives elected by the residents." Todd's face went beet red. "Who the F are you?" he snapped. "Some know-it-all who just showed up?" I didn't blink. "Just a neighbor who can read bylaws." He started shouting again, calling everyone complainers and freeloaders. At that point, another homeowner, an older woman named Patty, stood up and said, "We've lost faith in you, Todd. You should resign." Todd sneered. "I've lost faith in you." The room actually laughed at that one. It made no sense. Then another guy added, "Step down or we'll recall you." Todd puffed out his chest. "You'll have to force me off." I smiled and said, "Then that's what we'll effing do." And that's exactly what I set out to do. The next day, I grabbed a stack of documents from my filing cabinet, HOA bylaws, covenants, articles of incorporation. Then I spent my weekend deep diving into state HOA statutes, because, lucky for me, this is the kind of nerdy stuff I love. Turns out Todd and Linda's elections had violated our own governing rules. They'd both been appointed during an emergency session by a previous board without a quorum, without notice, and without proper voting procedure. According to the bylaws, that made their positions invalid. So I drafted a letter, not an angry rant, but a clean, professional demand for removal, and sent it to the HOA attorney, citing chapter and verse from both state law and our own documents. I even attached screenshots of the specific clauses. 3 days later, I got an email from the HOA lawyer that began, "After reviewing your claims, I must agree with your assessment." Todd and Linda were toast. By the end of the week, both of them had been officially removed from the board. Todd tried to argue, but the HOA's own attorney shut him down. Apparently, he didn't want to risk liability for running an illegitimate board. At the next meeting, Mark looked about 10 years younger. He publicly thanked me for pointing out the issue and asked if I'd consider helping rewrite the election procedures to make sure this never happened again. I didn't say yes right away. I'm not volunteering for that circus. But I'll admit it was satisfying watching Todd scowl from the back row with no microphone, no power, and no landscaping budget to misuse. The HOA had been quieter ever since. Meetings are civil, budgets are transparent, and Mark actually listens to residents now. The board's fatal flaw was their belief that their titles made them untouchable. They operated on the assumption that no one would ever check their work or challenge their authority on a procedural level. Your calm, evidence-based demolition of their positions was a thing of beauty. And our second story. The view from her kitchen was ruined by my towels. I made sure it stayed that way. So my neighbor knocked on my door yesterday, middle of the afternoon, bright sunny day, and with a completely straight face asked me if I could stop hanging my laundry in my backyard. At first I thought maybe she was joking. You know, when someone says something so absurd your brain just kind of freezes for a second trying to make sense of it. That was me, standing there in the doorway with a confused smile plastered on my face. When I asked her why, she sighed dramatically as if she was about to deliver news of great tragedy. "It kind of ruins the view from my kitchen," she said. "It's just not very pleasant to look at." Now let's set the scene a bit here. My laundry consists of the usual: jeans, shirts, towels, the occasional bed sheet. Nothing scandalous, nothing flashy. Just everyday clothes drying in the sun on a clean line strung between two posts. I live in a suburban neighborhood, not some gated luxury resort with an HOA that dictates the color of your doormat. We all have fences, we all have backyards. People mow their lawns, hang Christmas lights, set out inflatable Santas, normal things. So to hear her act like my drying clothes was some sort of visual pollution, I honestly thought I misheard her. "Wait," I said slowly, "you mean the laundry in my backyard?" She nodded. "Yes, it's right in my line of sight when I'm cooking. I like to keep my home nice and tidy, and it's just, well, it throws off the aesthetic." I had to physically stop myself from laughing. "You realize that's my yard, right? You don't actually have any say over what happens in it." Her expression tightened like she'd just bitten into a lemon. "Well," she said, crossing her arms, "I just thought you'd want to be considerate. We all have to look at each other's properties, and it would be nice if you thought about how your choices affect others." That was when it hit me. She was serious. Completely, 100% unironically serious. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm sorry the sight of laundry offends you, but I'm not going to stop doing something that's perfectly normal and environmentally friendly just because you don't like looking at it. Maybe close your blinds when you're in the kitchen?" Her face went red, she huffed, muttered something about people having no manners these days, and stormed off like she'd just been personally wronged by the universe. The whole interaction lasted maybe 2 minutes, but I've been replaying it ever since because I just can't get over the audacity. Like, how entitled do you have to be to knock on someone's door and tell them to change what they do in their own backyard because you don't like the view? The kicker is her backyard isn't exactly a magazine spread either. She's got a rusted patio table, some old gardening tools leaning against the fence, and weeds creeping through her flower beds. And she wants to talk about aesthetic? Please. This morning I decided to hang another load of laundry, partly because it needed to be done, but also, I'll admit, partly out of spite. I made sure the line was full, big fluffy towels, colorful bed sheets, even my mismatched socks, all flapping cheerfully in the breeze. It looked like a celebration of domestic normalcy. Sure enough, I caught her peeking through her kitchen window while I was hanging the last sheet. Our eyes met for half a second before she yanked her blind shut like I just flashed her. So now I'm making it my personal mission to have laundry out as often as possible. Towels? Hung. Bedding? Hung. Even if it's just a couple of shirts, I'll hang them with pride. My backyard, my laundry line, my rules. The irony is, it's not even like I'm some eccentric neighbor doing weird things. I'm literally just drying clothes in the sun. The way she acted, you'd think I was hosting a drum circle or building a chicken coop next to her fence. Honestly, I'm half expecting her to come back with some passive-aggressive compromise, like suggesting I get a drying rack for my garage or offering to chip in for a dryer. But I'm not budging. It's not about laundry anymore, it's about principle. And just to make sure she really gets the message, I might hang a little sign above the clothesline that says, "Now featuring the best view in the neighborhood." Because really, if the sight of clean laundry swaying in the breeze ruins her day, maybe the problem isn't my backyard. Maybe it's her outlook on life. I fully appreciate Operation Laundry Line, especially that idea of hanging a sign calling it the best view in the neighborhood. And yeah, some people genuinely wake up looking for something to be offended by. Your neighbor complaining about laundry is the suburban version of shaking a fist at clouds. The spite drying move was gold. You didn't fight, you just let the wind do the talking. Nothing's louder than peaceful defiance that smells like fabric softener. And our next story. Closing time doesn't apply to some customers. So this happened yesterday. I work in a lumber yard and don't work inside the store part of the business. The store just closed and most of the staff were leaving, except for the odd workers still in the store. I got into my car, which was parked less than 30 feet from a main road going through the town. As I start my vehicle, I suddenly hear a voice calling out. I look to my left and see a guy approaching my car. He asks me if I work there, and I replied, I do. He then asks if the store is closed, and I say, yes, the store closed a few minutes ago. He then proceeds to ask if we sell suction cups. I told him I don't work in the store, so I know nothing of what is sold in the store. He then asked if I could go and check with the staff to see if they do. I told him the store is closed. They're locking everything up. He then asks, can you ask them tomorrow if they do for me? I didn't even know the guy, and I wasn't going to do something he could easily do himself. I told him, you're going to have to do it yourself. You'll either have to come back in or phone tomorrow. He grumbled something, then walked off past my car towards the door of the store. I watched him for a full minute, and despite the fact I told him the store was closed, he opened the door and walked inside. I was hot and tired from the day, so I drove off and don't know what happened afterwards. And our last story. We think you should find happiness elsewhere. I'd been at this job for a few years and things were mostly fine. I wasn't the most outgoing employee, but I showed up, did my work, and stayed out of drama. My boss and I actually got along well. We'd chat sometimes after hours, joke around during slow days, and over time I started to think of him as more than just a manager. I thought he was someone I could actually talk to. Big mistake. One day I was having a particularly rough time. My mental health had been taking a hit, and I'd been trying to push through it quietly, but it started affecting my focus, and I figured it'd be better to be honest than to let my work slip without explanation. So I opened up. I told him I'd been struggling with depression, that I was working with my doctor, and that I might just need a little understanding while I got back on track. He was all sympathetic in the moment, said things like, hey, I get it, and you don't have to apologize for being human. I remember walking out of that conversation feeling a little lighter, like maybe finally I didn't have to pretend everything was fine. Yeah, that feeling lasted about 48 hours. By the end of the week, I got called into HR. My boss was there, wouldn't even look me in the eye. The HR rep started off with some fake concern, saying they'd heard about my situation. Then came the line I'll never forget. We think it would be best for everyone if you took some time to find happiness elsewhere. In other words, they were firing me. They tried to dress it up like they were just doing me some kind of favor. We just want what's best for you. This job might not be healthy for your mental state. Meanwhile, my depression wasn't caused by the job. It's something I've lived with since I was a teenager. I wasn't asking for special treatment, just some understanding. But apparently that was too much to ask. So yeah, I got fired for being honest about my mental health. But here's where the petty part comes in. My ex-boss is on call 24/7. His phone is his lifeline. If something breaks down after hours, he has to deal with it immediately. I happen to know that twice a week, like clockwork, he keeps his phone on the nightstand waiting for emergencies. So every now and then I block my caller ID, dial his number around 1 or 2 a.m. and let it ring. When he picks up, I just play creepy old carnival music for about 10 seconds. Nothing long, just enough to make sure he's fully awake and unsettled. Then I hang up. He always answers, he always hears it, and I know it probably screws up his sleep schedule just enough to make his days miserable. It's not much, and maybe it's a little childish, but honestly, every time I hear that faint shuffle of the receiver before I hang up, I can't help but smile. I finally found my happiness, just like they wanted. Turns out it sounds like a tinny music box playing at 2 a.m. on speakerphone. What happened to you is a profound betrayal, and the way you're processing it is completely understandable. This goes beyond a simple firing. It was a violation of trust at the most vulnerable level. You extended honesty and humanity, and in return, you were met with corporate cowardice disguised as concern. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.